Got you with your mouth full.
Susana Villa Gomez.
Siobhan McKinney, present.
Matthew Rathman, present. Victor Delgado, present.
And could we get someone to read the mission statement? That's not Matt.
Wow, that was harsh. I can read it. To support the evolving needs of the MSU Denver students by advocating in their best interests to enhance the university experience and opportunities.
All right, Will, if you want to say that you're present.
What was that? Sorry. Can you repeat yourself?
You say your attendance.
Oh, William Coase present.
All right, moving on to agenda. Has everyone seen the agenda? Do they see it, approve it, think everything's good?
I motion to approve.
I second that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Agenda approved. And moving on to.
It doesn't look like anybody's here for public comment, but we will just acknowledge if anybody comes into the room between the 11:35 and 11:50 block that we will go ahead and drop whatever discussion we're having to give space for public comment.
All right, moving on to new business, approval of the delegate candidates.
Perfect. So I don't know the easiest way to do it. I have a list in front of me of the delegates, including the ones that we accepted, as well as the other 4 that technically didn't make it. I did a loose vote when we did our retreat, but I would like to do a more formal vote just to make sure that everybody's still okay with us expanding the number from 8 to 10 delegates. Since everybody kind of voted in favor of that, I'm not going to open up the floor for discussion. I'm just going to go ahead and make a motion to extend the number of delegates from 8 members to 10 members.
I second that.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Perfect. So that'll be approved. And then would it be easiest for y'all if I just read out the names of the delegates that we will be including? And then would you guys also like to know the delegates that we're not including and why? Or do you have a preference on that, Levi?
I'll just say their name and just information about them because we need more to go off of if we're going to vote for them.
Perfect. So I can just try and give a brief summary of each of them, if that works. So the first delegate that we'd like for approval is going to be Cyrus Holt. He is somebody that's super active on campus, already works in the CMEI office with the Brother to Brother program. He also is interested in running in student government in future years. He had a really strong interview and a really strong application. So me, Patrick, and Will all together thought that he would be a really great candidate. The next is Steffi. I might mispronounce her last name, Ayala, I think. She also had a really, really great interview. She is a younger student, so she still has another year, so hopefully going to be running for student government in the future, but she wasn't positive. She wanted to do a lot of work surrounding like undocumented students, which I know is one of our huge goals for this semester, so we thought it was really great to bring her on, especially because she seems like she is somebody who's super informed on that issue, and she has her own personal experience tied to it. So we really like that about her. Next, we have Chase Durgadis, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He's also somebody that's already involved on campus. So he works with ARC in the health center, which we thought was like a great connection to have because we want to do more work with the health center. So having somebody that already works there, I thought would be a great opportunity. He also does a lot of advocacy work in regards to the LGBTQ plus community. So we thought it was good to have those ties in there as well. Next is Jamani Stefan. She also works in the CMEI office, and she also has a tie to the athletics program, which we thought was super cool. She's the manager for our boys basketball team. So just kind of, again, bringing in an identity that we don't already have with that connection to athletics, but then also she's already involved on campus and here frequently. And then we have Sarah. Did somebody put something in the chat? Sarah Acne, did I say that right? How do you say her last name? Is that how you say it? Okay. Uh, also has some involvement with the CMEI office. She's involved in fraternity and sorority life and other ways on campus. She had a huge interest in helping out with the PR committee and had some great ideas in regards to that. And we know that the PR committee has a lot of work that we need to do. So we were trying to look for people that were interested in helping with that and had great ideas. So she's got some social media experience and event planning experience that we thought would be really helpful to the PR committee. The next delegate we would like is Sanaa Walker. She is also super involved on campus. Noticing a theme here. She is in the urban leadership program and has showed like extensive leadership experience there, which was brought up in her interview as well as in her application. She's also involved in like the choir and other things on campus that we thought were interesting. Again, trying to get a diverse set of opinions. So we don't have anybody that's really in like the musical arts. So we thought that was an interesting perspective to bring in. We have the other Will. William McEwen, I think is how you say his last name. He's also somebody that's wanting to run for student government in the future. He is really involved on campus and he had a really great like application and interview. He just seemed like he was somebody that was really willing to work in like whatever space that we needed him to and was really flexible, but also had some ideas of his own. Anahi Palacios Enriquez is another one. She is somebody who is also starting to get involved on campus, a little bit younger, but she's graduating in the fall, so she unfortunately wouldn't be able to run for student government, but she would be interested in possibly running as a delegate again in the fall. However, she also had some great ideas in regard to like PR and wanting to help a little bit with like the sustainability side of things. She had a really nice application and her interview went really well. Next, we have Irvi Paul, who is also an urban leadership scholar and somebody that's super involved on campus, hangs out around the CMEI office, not working in there, but just very involved. She is somebody that could also bring in a very different perspective because she works like with the technological, like cybersecurity side of things, which we don't really, I think, have anybody that works in like the tech cybersecurity side of things. So we thought it would be interesting to bring in that different perspective. And then the last of the 10 delegates that we wanted to bring forward is Sky Puckett. You guys have seen Sky come to our meetings. She's been really vocal about like trying to advocate for different issues. But her interview also went super duper well. She was really passionate about helping with some of the sustainability stuff. So like focusing on making sure students have their basic resources and needs met. That way they can like actually come to campus and be their best selves. So definitely an interest in helping with some of the sustainability aspects. So those are the 10 that we would like to set forward. And then do you guys want to hear the ones that we're not going with?
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
Because this was through an interview process and could be considered personnel, I would highly recommend not stating who did not get selected.
Perfect. A couple of the people that did not end up getting it also withdrew their applications or had some faults where it was like they weren't actually going to be in school this semester and other things. So perfect. Does anybody have any issues with the names on that list or accepting any of those delegates? Any sort of conversation you'd like to bring up? And then, Will, I know you're virtual, but if you have anything you'd like to add to anything that I said about any of those delegates, I was trying to remember our reasonings, but it's been a minute since we've talked about it last.
I think you pretty much hit it on the head, the nail. I would remind all the counselors that these candidates are very motivated to get involved, and it kind of seems like we definitely need some help, you know. I think it would definitely facilitate business for student government, you know, advocacy for student government. So, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Any other questions or concerns before I make the motion? This is your final opportunity.
Are these delegates committing to both the spring and the fall semester or just the spring?
They'll just be committing to the spring semester. And then, so the idea of this is just since it's a trial program, we'll try it out for the spring, kind of see what works, what methods work for getting them involved, and if we want to continue it into the fall. I think the hope is that a lot of these people will end up running for student government. I know like Cy and Sky, and I think maybe Steffi and Chase all expressed interest in actually running in the future. And there was a few people that were like a little unsure. So I mean, the goal is to kind of get people to actually be counselors. But if it's something that seems like it's a super successful program, I would love for us to end up implementing it more long term. But for now, they'll just be for the spring.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'll hold my comments for later.
Is it about this though? Because I'm gonna make a motion to approve them. Okay. All right, I would like to make a motion to approve these 10 delegates that I have just previously listed to be our delegates for the semester.
Seconded.
Any objections? Any abstentions? All right, I will email them and let them know.
Can I?
Yeah.
I have a question. What's like the next steps from now? Like, what do the committee chairs have to have before those delegates come into play? Like, what's the next steps from here?
Yeah. So I believe the current plan is to do some brief trainings with them, just kind of get them educated on like our governing documents, kind of like the basics of what each committee does. And then I was going to try, Armando had the idea of just setting it up on our Teams channel to have like tasks and like meetings on there. So it's kind of easier for them to just kind of find and pick and choose what they want to do. So I think the expectation that will be coming from the committee chairs is just adding those meetings into the Teams channel so that they're easy to find for those delegates to be able to come and join those, as well as adding like projects and tasks into there. And then also just brainstorming ideas of how you can include these delegates and make sure like their voices are heard, they can be incorporated into meetings, but also like projects that they can get involved in, like being like, well, since we have 10 more people to help us out now, here's some great ideas that we have and where we would need the help. So that'll be somewhat the expectation. I mean, obviously we still need to work out the exact details. And I'd love to hear if you guys have any ideas, like within your committee meetings and stuff. If you guys want me to attend and kind of like help figure out how this program can work, I'm more than happy to. Stephen?
Just so everyone knows and for informational purposes, the first thing before we start assigning them committee tasks is that technically we do have to swear them in a way officially as a member of TSAC. So let's think about what meeting you all want to do that. Try to make it a little bit more exciting. Maybe we can have food at that meeting or something like that. So that way, just encouraging them. And then after we swear them in, and that's something you all can decide on whether or not you want to do, if you want to do like a special ceremony at this meeting. Armando and I really have to go with them and give them the lay of the land in terms of TSAC and train them and all. And then I think once we train them, however he and I decide to do that, we'll of course communicate with you all, but then we're going to release them. So I would anticipate, let's try to get this done within like a 1 to 3 week period. It's a lot, but I think we want to get them up and running. These are 10 really interested folks. So we want to get them moving.
Any other questions?
Sorry.
Go for it.
I do think that's a good timeline. With that being said, I do think we should approve the new constitution if they are going to be tested on it, for the future, have that approved or ratified before we have them trained, if that makes sense, Stephen. But that could definitely get done within that 2 to 3 week window, I believe.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
So what we just do for the new constitution, I know that's the next thing on the agenda, so we can kind of move over to that. Are we gonna do an initial read through today and then try and ratify it by next meeting, or is that gonna be a little bit more long term?
I think, unfortunately, I didn't get the paragraphs I needed from some of the co-chairs, which I will discuss when it's my turn. But this might have to be pushed off another week because of that. And then, and yeah, that's what I have for that. While we're still talking about the delegate program, I did have one question for the advisors in regards to tracking their involvement in student government. You know, whether it be showing up for that monthly meeting or the other forms of advocacy that routes that they can take. What would that look like? I think it'd be a good question to brainstorm on.
Well, Will, just to share, and I echo what Haley said. So I think one, the way you all wrote out what delegates are going to be doing, Armando and I can really hone in on how many meetings they attend and what that really looks like. We'll be monitoring through Teams what projects or committees that they join and put forth. So I would say that, and I know I'm kind of answering this broadly for you, so I apologize. But I would say the main thing to note is that um, we we will continue to work with them just in terms of making sure that they are showing up, doing what they're said and told to do, as long as you all as counselors are sharing with us what needs to be done. So that way we can sort of be the enforcement without being the enforcement, I guess. I don't mean to make it sound like that. So
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Is that all the discussion on the delegates program? And we can move over to Constitution. So we probably should have done that at the beginning for the approval of the agenda, but are you wanting to table the discussion on the new Constitution then? Or do you just
Yeah. I mean, I want to just remind the chairs of the committees, the standing committees, if you haven't submitted your paragraphs, your purpose paragraph, and looked over the Constitution to leave notes, please do so. Me and Matt looked over the Constitution last night, and we only saw a few comments from maybe like two counselors at most. Um, I do think this is the opportunity to change the governing document for future cycles of TSAC. So I do think it's best in our best interest to change it now. I also think that if we all agreed in that one meeting to get it done this week, that we should have had it done this week. So if the people who aren't doing what they need to do don't do it by next week, then that's going to delay a lot of other things down the pipeline. So just as a reminder, if you did not submit your purpose paragraph or give comments on the Constitution or read it over, please do so by the next meeting.
Matt?
I just wanted to check maybe with Will, do we want to maybe go over it today since either way, this is going to take a lot of time to go over the whole Constitution? Do we want to go over the pieces that we have more solid and just approve like sections?
I guess if there's no like other comments on certain sections, then I could see us approving like parts of the Constitution if that is what the council wants to, if that's how the council wants to handle it. I don't have any issues with that.
So I guess then we'll put to a vote to review the Constitution and approve the sections that have already been completed. So yeah, y'all still their vote. Motion to vote on the reviewing the Constitution today.
I'll second that.
All opposed? Any substantions? All in favor? All right. Motion passed. We'll review the Constitution, then approve sections.
Brandon, do you have a copy of that? Or do you need us to send you one? All right. That's not the right one. That's a copy. I'll send it to you. Just one sec. Yeah, we can read it kind of section by section, and discuss some of the comments and some of the changes we made and just see how far we can go. So the first section under the Student Advocacy Council Constitution, we didn't change anything. It just says, we, the students of Metropolitan State University Denver, in order to build a more equal and efficient government, hereby establish this Constitution of student government, the Student Advocacy Council, all governing powers is vested solely in this Constitution. Under structure, fortunately, I can't see the comments on my phone. So yeah, Stephen brought up, so even in the first line, in the original, it said 10 MSU Denver students for the council. Stephen suggests we're talking about going up to 12 this next year and also making it flexible so we can still have like 10 to 12. So we changed it to the Student Advocacy Council shall ideally consist of 12 MSU Denver students with a minimum of 10. There are 2 students, where 2 of these students will be part of the Student Advisory Constitutory Board, SACAB representatives, and one of these students will be the Board of Trustee representative, which are outlined in the Elections Code, which shall be elected by the student body. Within the council, there will be a minimum of 2 elected co-chairs or a chair and vice chair. Was there a comment on that piece? Would be the second one. Well, do you know what you meant by this statement under the chair and vice chair? All right. So we might come back to that one because I don't know what Will's thoughts were on that off the top of my head. These leadership roles are intended to primarily maintain parliamentary order and represent the Council of MSU Denver's president's cabinet. Aside from that, the chairs will share equal and fair distribution of power given to all other council members and between themselves. Each TSAC administration is to be advised by the university's appointed faculty or staff members, with their primary advisor assigned and secondary advisors being named as needed. There shall be at least one executive assistant per SG TSAC cycle. So we change the language here to state that we have to have one advisor, but more can be added. Kind of like how we've been running. So that's why we put it as secondary advisors. So it could be more than one.
Perfect. Do we want to pause there, or would you like
Yeah.
to keep going with another
Yeah,
one?
we might as well just
Okay.
do it chunk by
Does
chunk.
anybody have questions or concerns about that portion of the Constitution? Cool. And then are we doing this just for clarity's sake? We probably shouldn't vote on this now, right? This should just be the initial read through, or should we vote still on these individual sections?
I think it can go either way
Because
depending on how we
technically,
want
for like
to
a
go.
constitutional amendment, don't we do a read through the first meeting and then the second?
Oh, that
meeting we
would
vote
be
to
actually,
approve, right?
that would be fair.
Yeah, that's,
Okay,
yeah, so section then.
cool. I'll just open it up for questions then after each section. That way you guys can make notes if there's any other changes that people think there
So
should be had, or if they have problems with it, even though people should have been making comments technically.
just for point of clarification with that, if we're reading through it today, we are missing some sections. So would that mean next week we read them and then vote on those chunks the next week? Or would it be more beneficial to go with Will's idea and just postpone it?
I think that we could just count those as changes that you're making in between the first read and the
Okay.
second read, and we could just vote them in at the next meeting.
All right.
I think those are something that, I mean, each of the chairs is going to write their own.
So what
Ideally, that'll be
so what we could do is even read through those sections. So it's a read through and then next week would be like friendly amendments.
right.
All right.
Okay. You can. Sorry.
But did we have any questions or concerns on the structure section? Right. And then we go on to general elections, so how we get elected. Members of SGTSAC will be elected by MSU Denver students in the spring semester every academic year. The council shall be composed of students who are enrolled for a full academic year, fall to spring semester, and have no record of student misconduct per MSU Denver's Code of Conduct, hold a GPA of no less than 2.5, and have a minimum of 3 credit hours during the enrolled semester of the elected counselors. So we did have a comment on this one, because we're still we had some debate on the qualifications, kind of a debate between going towards excellence and equity. So the more we raise the like GPA and credit requirements could get us potentially towards more like excellence, but Sam made a comment that on the side that references that at one point we talked about a like accountability structure. So like if someone ran with like a 2.0, then they would have to sign like an accountability thing with their advisors to make sure they're on the path to success. But we definitely had some debate around that one.
How are you defining success?
Well, actually, I think it was more working with an academic improvement plan. Sorry. So they would work presumably with their advisors to create like an academic performance plan to make sure that they are getting their GPA up, doing their classes, and succeeding as a student as well as a TSAC member.
I agree. I also think that you don't need to be an A+ student to be successful.
Mhm.
And I worry, I think it's beneficial to have some of that like support in place from advisors, but I worry about that feeling punitive. Some students C's do degrees. And that's just, and I don't think that reflects on somebody's leadership. I think that says more about all the things that they're juggling in their life. And so I think maybe just some of the wording around that, I just wanted to flag, but I don't think somebody's GPA reflects how well they can do in TSAC or not.
I'm gonna give it to Sam first
Yeah.
because he had his hand up first, and then we can go to Vic.
Yeah, I just wanted to point you to my comment. If you scroll up a little bit, has the text in the candidate packet that we agreed on last year. So just if you need to work off of that, up a little bit more, and above Steven's comment. Yeah, so that is how it currently appears. I'm going to default to however you guys decide, but just wanted to point you towards that if it makes the conversation easier.
I was gonna point out Sam's comment. I really like the wording on that one. But just to note as well, once you get below a 2.5 at school, you're on academic probation through the school, so that's something to consider as well.
I don't think that's a 2.5.
I'm on it.
It is?
Yeah. I'm on it.
Saying I'm right.
Once I hit 2.5, that's when I started getting on academic probation. So
So hello.
So for the 2.5 is more also of a protection for TSAC. If a counselor is put on academic probation, they can, obviously, if they don't get their grade up, then they can't go to school anymore after that. So part of it is so we avoid having to replace that counselor in the future. So it's also a protection for TSAC, and I agree with you. GPA isn't like a huge factor in whether an individual can be successful in school necessarily or in advocacy specifically. But because there are these other policies that we kind of have to adhere to as students too, that's more of a cushion for TSAC, just to avoid going through a special election or putting an ad hoc committee and just avoiding those issues.
I think I have to agree with Will because most organization at campus, when you do join certain organization, there is a minimum of GPA, and students that does fall below a 2.5 does struggle more on focusing on their academic and will focus more on the program or organization. So I prefer that the student focus on their academic, and once they're above the 2.5, I'm not saying they're not successful, they are successful, but their degree is forced without anything else. So the 2.5, this is something I do agree with.
Stephen.
It's just a recommendation, I think, for the purpose of this. Sam has really strong language there. What you could do is just move that chunk of language, even though it's from the election policy, I believe, Sam, but just throw that into the Constitution right after. For MSU, Denver's hold a GPA of no less than 2.5, have a minimum of 3 credits, so on and so forth. And then right there, it should also say with a minimum of now 12 students, if that's what you all decide to bring it up to. And then after that sentence, that's when you include Sam's little blurb there, because then that gives broad definition of what student success is and a plan for if students fall into there. And that's what a constitution should really do, is just provide the structure for you.
So my biggest concern wasn't necessarily implementing this language now. I will read my comments from me and Matt analyzing this minimum and this track plan for putting this in place, I have more concerns than just the 2.5 GPA thing, whether it's a philosophical talk or debate between excellence and equity there. But some other serious concerns for me are the plan, there's no structure to it. So if we were to adopt it, we would have to come up with structure as to what that plan would look like. There's no deadlines on the plan. If the counselor weren't to be able to go above a 2.5, what that would look like, right? What would happen there? Me and Matt or the accountability for the future don't have power to see other students' GPAs, although maybe someone else has that power. Advisors might, but I don't know if they're allowed to share information like that with other students. I don't know if there's like some kind of protection, yeah, for students there. So I could see some concerns there. Other issues that I was thinking is it doesn't specify whether there's a max amount of incoming counselors being on this plan. So theoretically, a whole council could be on this plan, and that would increase the workload of the accountability committee. And I would argue that would steal from our time to focus on other issues that are the responsibilities we have. So I'm a little concerned with that for future implementation if it does take place. Let me see what else. I also think that shouldn't be the sole responsibility of another counselor who is a student as well, taking care of the academics of other student leaders. That shouldn't really fall as a responsibility on other student leaders, in my opinion. And if it does, I do think advisors need to take a major role in that if there is some kind of split there. But I also don't think this should fall under a student's responsibility, taking care of other student leaders' GPAs personally.
Victor, you had a response to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna agree to that part. Maybe it could be how other advisors are delegated certain counselors. Maybe that could come up in the conversations that they have, like academic progress, how's it going? So that can be the advisor counselor confidentiality, really, and it doesn't fall on the accountability committee.
Um, I agree. Sorry. Yeah. Um, I do. I am also, again, cautious about adopting this 2.5 GPA and more so the plan, the academic plan idea. Again, there's no structure on that at all. And I don't want to adopt something into the Constitution if it's not flushed out, you know. We also have a time frame with ratifying this so we can get the delegates trained, right? I think them studying this or at least reading it is going to be important because this is the document that gives them what responsibilities they have as delegates and as future counselors, and also what powers it gives them. So this is, in my opinion, an important document for them to read over, and that has to take place during their training, which is, if we're trying to aim to 2 to 3 weeks, flushing out this academic plan potentially could happen within that time frame. But there's also that possibility it doesn't come all together by that time frame. So it would really depend again how much support the accountability committee gets from the advisors on this structuring of this plan within that time frame. And I guess I would have to ask the advisors since they're here.
Someone else before me. So I remember when this was passed and proposed, and there was a lot of conversation about this. And what I will say is that it's hard to determine what an academic plan is that is like standard for every student. I think it depends on the student. Every student has individual needs. And so it's hard to like articulate that, I think, in this document necessarily, specifically. So I'll just say that. I think that this 2.5 minimum GPA, this has to be for them to hold a position, right? In TSAC period, to run.
But the way it's stated now, they can run going 2.5, but it has to be above it.
Right.
But they're gonna be put.
Right, right, to get it up in that first term. Right.
First semester.
Okay. I think that it makes a lot of sense that whoever the advisor is who is supporting that student would be the one who would probably be working with them to develop whatever that plan is. And Stephen, if this doesn't sound
No,
good, tell me.
Yeah.
Like,
No, you're spot on.
Yeah.
It should be with the advisor because there is a little bit of academic confidentiality.
Right.
That needs to be-
exactly. And so I think that would be with the advisor, to your point, like there's FERPA and other things that we need to be able to protect people's private information and their academic information. And so that's what I would say. And I don't know that that needs to be that specific in this document, but and if it does, if we just want to make a reference to that, but that it would fall with the advisors. The advisor would be the one to work with them if they are on their caseload. And that would be the role of the advisor. So it doesn't fall on the accountability committee.
I've got Vic over here with a question.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a question, like more going towards Dr. Barone's point. It's not every student is going to be able to fit a certain criteria for academic plan. So I don't think maybe putting one general academic plan in the Constitution would be very equal for all students. So maybe that could just be something that the advisors would work on independently.
And maybe we say that, or y'all say that it's up to the discretion of the advisor to develop the academic plan.
So just take Sam's wording, but instead of saying SGTSAC Accountability Committee, put the primary advisor.
Yep.
Yep, that's it.
Matt, did you still have
So another thing I was thinking about this in regards to one of Will's potential issues of to avoid the whole council being in this situation is maybe also carving out where this could only be for like 2 students or something, or kind of leave the gap some, but still close it just a little bit more. So we don't run into like half the council or a third of the council or whatever being on these plans. But still leaving that door cracked for those individuals who may not have the GPA, but have the leadership experience and everything else. Also, one last thing. With that part of it, what we put in the Constitution doesn't necessarily outline all of the actual policy, it just mainly references that it exists. So I think that's also kind of what Dr. Brone was referencing, of leaving it vague that like this would exist, and then we would have to create the policy in the background to back it up.
So real quick on that, I'm just thinking about actually how this would go down, and I think because we don't have that plan flushed out yet, I am more leaning towards leaving. There's 2 options really, I think, moving forward, is leaving just a 2.5 GPA with no plan at all, meaning if they're below that GPA threshold, they can't run, or removing the GPA requirement. No. Okay. Well, that's why I want to open it up to the council, because again, I do not feel comfortable yet writing that plan, Scott, what is it called? The plan, whatever. The academic plan, thank you, and not having any type of structure behind it. It's like, well, we don't know what we're doing. Your academics kind of depend on this plan now, and if it doesn't go well, so I'm also concerned if that doesn't do well because there's no structuring around this plan. We're just saying, oh, this academic plan. But what does that look like from an advisor's point? What does that look like, again, from the student's point of view who might be in STEM, but the advisor doesn't have any STEM background, right? Do we involve the school? What is that? How do we make those connections, right? What's the official policy in all of this? What are the contingencies if it doesn't go well for the student with this plan? Does this conflict with other policy from academic colleges that might actually already have processes for this for students who might be not doing well, right, in classes in their field? So there's a lot of other concerns other than just FERPA and like privacy concerns that I have here, and I don't feel super comfortable putting wording in our governing document if we don't have those guidelines flushed out enough. I don't know.
I've
So-
got Siobhan, then Vic, then Susanna.
I believe that anything to do with leadership, there should be a standard. There should be a standard. So as the university policy for academic is 2.5, so I think we should keep it at 2.5. And also I think we shouldn't have that thing that y'all saying, the academic, or if you have this some plan like that. I think it should just have a set standard, 2.5, and take out all the other wording.
So what I'm suggesting, because of timeline's sake, because of the delegate program coming in, because we don't want to keep these 10 motivated students from participating later on in the semester, right? Potentially losing them. I'm suggesting we either scratch the plan, keep it at a 2.5 GPA minimum, or just scratch the GPA entirely and leave it as is.
And why can't we take the third option, that is adopting SAM's, but leaving it up to the advisors to run that academic plan?
Because I'm not sure.
Because the advisors would know all the policies that you were suggesting that you were worried about, and knowing how to deal with that and making sure the plan is in regards to that. Plus, as many other counselors have said, those plans will need to be super individualized. There's no sense in fleshing out a plan that you're just going to have to change for each student.
No, right. But again, as long as there's some kind of guidelines for that from potentially advisors or something like that.
Would the advisors be willing to write something like that out?
Within a time frame too is the issue here.
We can compose something, that's fine. But just so you all know, I mean, part of our role is to check in with, I mean, I have my two TSAT counselors that I meet with, but I meet with more than just both of them. But at the end of each semester, it's standard practice for us to make sure you're all doing well academically. We do that with our student employees. We do it with you all as well, just because of the level of office that you all hold. So again, I think a lot's being said here. I would strongly recommend at this point that you have some of Sam's language there and you put it into the Constitution. It doesn't have to be as detailed, but at least rather than the accountability committee there, it just says up to advisors, support or discretion or something like that, to simplify it a little bit.
I'm sorry, Vic and Susanna, did you guys still have your comments?
It was really just to go off of Haley's point. I mean, why can't we submit the Constitution with that language that Sam wrote and then work on the policy afterwards if that's the case?
I mean, we could, but it would have to be done by elections, because if we do have a situation where we have a student counselor who is voted in within these parameters, within that situation, and it states here in the document, like what if we go with some of Sam's wording, then I don't want to throw that student into, a situation where it wasn't flushed out. Like you know what I mean? We wrote it down, but nothing really came up out of it. And that'd be on me for writing it in at the end of the day. Like I have to bear that responsibility, if that makes sense.
Not really, because we all have to take the responsibility since we're all the ones voting and having a discussion on it. And I think the majority of counselors agree with letting the advisors make individualized plans. And then Armando put something in the chat. If we are talking about academic qualifications, let's also keep in mind that the applications are already technically open for candidates, so they already pose a certain academic requirement. So that wording is already in the elections code, if I'm correct. So I'm assuming that's already contained within the application. So what's the harm in adopting it into our constitution? Making the one change that it doesn't fall on the accountability committee, but instead fall on the advisors.
I mean, I don't have necessarily an issue. My issue is more having, I don't know enough about like these plans to have enough faith in them. I don't know if the advisors can speak on them, like what that would look like for the student.
To give you an idea of what an academic plan could look like in the space of a student in a leadership position, it would truly be, we may set some requirements like you need to meet with your academic advisor, you need to have certain standards that you meet with your professor potentially. Tutoring, there has to be a level of tutoring that you have to do, and then we would probably step up regular check-ins. For example, I may ask to meet with them every 2 weeks versus maybe once a month or anything like that. So there would be different checkpoints that we as the advisors would take without overburdening the student, but there would be a level of accountability that we would put on, and we would detail it and outline it. And we would probably also communicate with some of the instructors who are doing that to ensure that they know, hey, they have this very high position, they're holding this office, and they're not doing that well in school. So we need to communicate with you all. So I know that's a very broad stroke of it, but that's essentially what a plan would look like.
Real quick, 2 comments in the chat, and then I want to give Susanna the chance to speak. So Sam said that the wording in the application is in the application that way, but it could still be revised since we don't start tabling till next week. And Armando just reiterated that academic plans are extremely personal and different per person. Okay, Susanna.
That's something where I agree with Armando says. Academic plans are extremely personal, and through experience, many organizations already have like academic trails, scholarship trails, or etc., whatever they call them. And it doesn't matter what degree you graduated in, depending on how you work with that student on that plan, like what Steven said, that's the most successful way a student can improve their GPA. So what I'm understanding, your main concern is that they're not going to reach that GPA or going below that GPA. Is that the main concern?
No, so it's more of a faith of writing this into our governing document, but not knowing what the guidelines are and throwing that student into that process. It's more of a consciousness thing for me, a good consciousness. Like, do I like write this in and then hope for the best kind of situation for the student, or is there more to it that I'm just not seeing here? And I'm thinking there's definitely more to it, but I don't think we've been in a situation where we've had to do this yet, so this would be kind of like maybe a first time for advisors as well. And I want to make sure the student counselors that get elected in under these pretenses are able to succeed if we do put this wording in our governing document.
Just for the sake of efficiency, because we've been talking about this for quite some time, and I believe the majority of us are on the same page. Not an official vote because we're not voting this in today, but just kind of a show of hands. Who would be happy if we put in the wording that Sam has in there, but switch it so that it's not the TSAC Accountability Committee that comes up with those plans, but rather the academic advisors? Show of hands, just real quick.
Sure.
So it looks like the majority of the council, so maybe make that adjustment when we do the second read through and vote on it. Matt.
So one other small concern I brought up earlier that could be solved by just a couple words in this is something like on a case by case basis. Because we don't necessarily want this situation to like dominate the council.
I think I would be happy with that. Kind of a show of hands. Would you guys be? Case by case. Cool. I think that would be fine. So if you guys want to change that wording and then we could move forward.
I have a quick question actually for the advisors because I'm getting two kind of different answers. What is the academic probation GPA number or threshold for MSU? Because originally when we did this, it was 2.0 and Victor's telling that he was put on it for 2.5.
I did find for grad students actually 3.0.
Dr. Barone, you might know this better than I do.
And I have not looked at this in a while, but it did used to be 2.0. It might be, depending on what program you're affiliated with, or if you're a scholarship student, there are lots and lots of other factors, which is what we're talking about when we're saying that there's, a lot of personalization and every student situation is unique. But in terms of academic standing, like for financial aid purposes, it is a 2.0 to be eligible for financial aid, whether that's loans or grants or whatever. But then there are other requirements depending on if you're getting scholarships or if you're part of a particular program. They can have their own academic standards. So that's a complicated question. And then in terms of support for students and developing these individualized supports and what that looks like, I think it's just really, I did this for 5 years. This was my first job when I started at MSU Denver. And so that's why I really want to advocate that we're being really mindful that every student situation is different. And we can't just prescribe something that is going to work for every student. Mm-hmm. We have to tailor that approach and that support and those resources for the student as they need them. So I don't think that a prescribed anything is going to be helpful just for your own peace of mind.
Are we ready to move on to the next section?
There's actually one other issue in the sentence we actually need to talk about. Because Sam referenced that in the elections code, it says 6 credits, whereas our Constitution currently says 3. So we can just let Sam know to change it in the elections code, or we change it on our end. Sam's made the comment that he's perfectly fine just matching the language, but
thoughts on the difference between 6 and 3? Do you guys have specific reasoning for?
So it's kind of still on that excellence versus accessibility kind of conversation, because there's some argument on, there have been some points on to make it 6 credits to show they're more involved on campus. But we're also thinking of other unique situations, like if they have 6 credits the first semester, but say they only need like 2 classes the next semester, but one gets dropped kind of thing. Oh, I think Armando also put something in chat relevant to what I was saying. Oh, he said, if I recall correctly, it was more of a measure of commitment to being a student, not just trying to be a TSAC leader for a check.
So more to the reasoning and my thoughts was if we allow a minimum of 3 credits for a student counselor to come in, there is no guarantees that they will, one, drop that class, they fail that class, or something happens in their personal life where they just can't, or the school drops that class. And that's a big, that again, if they get elected in and that happens, through the semester, we just lost a counselor because they're not a student anymore. Again, this is a check to also protect TSAC from situations where we're having to scramble to fill in positions.
So just to clarify, do you want it to be 6 in the Constitution then instead of the 3 that you guys currently have in there?
That's the debate we're trying to bring. Yeah, we wanted to bring it to the council, but kind of where me and Matt ended up landing after talking about it for like 30 minutes is we think that they should start out with 6 credits as a protection for TSAC. And then the second semester, if something happens where they drop down to 3, then we should allow it at that point for that counselor to keep going, if that makes sense. Because again, students don't always control whether classes are dropped or what have you, or canceled, excuse me. And we were thinking of allowing that flexibility for student counselors.
Siobhan?
Hi again. Like I said before, I believe that being in a leadership position, that requires high standard. I mean, so I feel like allowing certain things, like just because you want anyone on it, then we'll end up having someone, excuse me for saying this, but you will end up having a leader like Donald Trump running the presidency or just being a leader. So that's how I feel about that. I'm sorry.
Matt and then Levi? Do you have your hand up? Just Matt?
So part of why we discussed this is actually I'm in this position. I was planning on taking 6 credits this semester and life happened and now I can only take 3 because I only need 9 credits to graduate, but I can't take 2 of them this semester.
So
that's just more food for thought.
Again, that goes back to the other one. It's the case by case basis. I mean, that's something between you and advisor. You could figure it out. But if it starts messing with your work here, then that's something maybe we could bring to the table. But I think that's just super personal as well. Like, and most students, I think, should be taking at least 6 classes to be a minimum student at school.
So maybe we go with kind of a similar wording to the GPA requirement. Taking 6 credits with exceptions on case-by-case basis. So that way, like if you register for classes and you end up having to withdraw, like Matt's situation, or like you're set to take, you need 6 more credits, but they're only offering one of the 3 credit classes you needed, and then you have to take the other one in the summer. Like things like that, so that we have wording built into there for the protections, but then we still have, you should be at least taking like the 6 credits and on campus. I think I have Amelia, then Dr. Barone.
I was just
Amelia first, and then
I was just gonna say, I would really like that language to be in there, because then it doesn't hinder people from applying, because students can't control if a class gets canceled, but if somebody really wants to be a part of this space, I don't think we should limit them to that. I also think, if a class does get canceled, I'm sure that they would need to find another one to continue their degree. So I think it is very much a case by case basis. And I think if we put that language in there, then that increases accessibility while also ensuring that we are protected. So we don't need to run a special election or something like that.
I appreciate that language. And I think the other thing that you all have to consider and think about just for consideration is that graduate students, which you all are accessible to and open to as well, graduate student credits are very different than undergrad in terms of course load and those types of things. So that's just, I think having it in a case by case basis does allow for that flexibility as well, because to be a graduate student and be full time looks very different than it is for an undergrad student. So just want to offer that too.
Did you have something real quick?
I think it's just like how, going back to Siobhan's point, we do want some level of standard because we are student leaders. So we should have that minimum requirement to run, to be appointed. But if stuff happens, we got you. Advisors got your back. Because you are a student leader, you are going to need that extra work. You're going to need that extra support. And I think that's what the advisors are there for, though. That's just something I think I needed to mention.
I just want to call attention to the time. We do have one more item on our agenda, and then we still have our updates to get through, and we only have 25 minutes left in the meeting.
So this is probably one of the most contentious parts of the Constitution. You could see like there's like 10 comments and like 10 paragraphs for that section. But so if we get through just this part, then that would already help a lot. I do like Haley's idea of including that flexibility and also stating clearly that, thank you, that it should fall under that same kind of plan kind of thing, I would think. And I think that, again, does not necessarily fall under the accountability committee,
Or rather, the advisors.
but under the advisors, correct. So some wording making that clear as well.
Amelia?
Are there more steps in the Constitution that you would like to flesh out today?
Ideally, if you read the Constitution, you would have put the comments there. So, I mean, yes, we could, but I don't want to spend entire days like me and Matt have flushing this out. So if you have time, read it and leave me your comments, and me and Matt will take our time out of our day to debate for hours on what to write and how to write it. So that way we don't have to spend a long time doing it during the meetings.
Well, I think there is something to be said about us as a council having this dialogue together.
I would second that. I almost feel like it might be fruitful for us to have some sort of full council meeting about this. And I know that like official voting and read-throughs and stuff should be in here, but there's a lot to flesh out, and it's one thing for me to leave a comment. And it's another thing for us to have an active
Discussion about it together. Yeah.
and get the different viewpoints. So maybe something to consider for y'all.
So I get, based on what I'm hearing now, it sounds like we might want to call like a special session just for this. It could still be recorded, but we could spend a council meeting outside of our Friday one to really dig into this.
I think that that would be spectacular.
So I'll make a motion to do a special session to address the Constitution.
Seconded. Any objections? Any abstentions? Perfect. We'll have to flesh out the details for that. Stephen, do you have something to add?
Just to add, if you all are going to do a special session, I do want to call out the work that Matt and Will have been doing with this. This has taken a lot of time. So in doing so, if that's what you all want, then hold the special session. You all may need to adjust your calendars in order to make that happen. And it may not be at the most opportune times to do that. But in order to make this really work, I'm just asking that you all try to find some flexibility in your schedule, because that's what's going to be needed in order to host a special session. Or it's something where you have this meeting, you do your normal business, and then you continue on immediately after. You move your special session to the office, to a smaller conference room, something like that.
Matt.
So two things with that. I would still encourage everybody to read and make comments in the Constitution, because that can help, like we've started already. It starts the conversation, especially on contentious points. And also, kind of based off what Steven said, this might be more than one meeting. More than one like special session, unless we're planning like 4 hours plus or something, maybe. I don't know. Depends on how quickly we can get through it. But as we saw in this one section, it's been like 25, 30 minutes.
Yeah. I'm hoping that you guys have laid most of the groundwork, so it shouldn't be too contentious. Like Will said, I think this is one of the more contentious parts within the Constitution, and the rest of it should be fairly easy for us to like breeze through and maybe make little things, especially if people read through it and make comments ahead of time. But we can definitely get that scheduled. For the sake of time, I would like to move on to our next agenda item then. February events.
Who added that one? Okay.
I was going to say a piece real quick. Right. So kind of we're going to this new semester and everything, and like we just saw, we're going through a bunch of reviews, meetings, and everything about the Constitution, and we have a lot of important stuff. So I did want to bring up that I had spoken to Susanna and a couple of the people about having events in February, but I did want to bring up the issue of getting back into the groove. So now we're coming back to school and kind of asking the council and wanting to know kind of their capacity and like schedules for the upcoming month. So we know if we can even facilitate events, because from what it sounds like, a lot of us have a lot of things we need to attend to, meetings and things to work on. So it was kind of an issue we brought up that we want to do events for February, but we want to make sure we have enough people and capacity for it. So it's something I want to bring up to the council. Sure.
Um, I've been working, on the vote and the RTD stuff and like that, and I'm still gonna continue working on that. But I have a senior thesis this semester, so I'm gonna have to like take a step back a little bit, try to work on that, put more time into that. So in terms of like events and stuff, I wouldn't necessarily. I don't think I'd have the capacity to be able to do.
And also, sorry. I did also want to bring up, while we do know that we have the delegate program coming up, I did want to ask, probably more after that, finding more details. Some people are going to be assigned to the PR committee to help out with that stuff, but we might need more people. And it goes along with asking if everyone has capacity to help out with that type of stuff, especially since if we're going to have events like we did last year for the grab and go, do we have the representation of TSAC counselors to talk about all the things we're up to, like telling students about, oh, we're changing the Constitution, oh, we're talking about OER, oh, we're talking about Tivoli Reimagined, and stuff like that.
I'm actually semi-unfortunate for myself, but I'm on kind of on the opposite end from Victor, to where I actually would have more availability this semester, and especially this next month.
Depends on the time and date for me because I do have a fairly busy semester, but like if we can schedule things fitting around people's schedules, I'm more than happy to help when and where I can, and I can be flexible if need be. But like obviously, like if I have class, I'm not gonna miss class. If I have work, I'm not gonna miss work.
This is just a point of information for everyone. Do remember that sooner, and it's not going to happen necessarily immediately in February, but we are having elections coming up. And so there will be different information sessions, tabling, different things like that coming up. And so I agree with you, Levi. I think it'd be great to have something outside of the normal council work in February. Just remember, once we get into late February, early March, we are getting into primetime election season.
I also want to bring up a concern I did have with kind of a potential issue, not really an issue, but something that I feel like wouldn't be effective for TSAC is that we have events and we're having the delegates help us out. I just feel like we should be able to commit more to the events we table, because the last thing I feel like we should have is that we get the delegate program come in, they help us out, but it's pretty much our delegates. At all the tabling events, all the events we need to show up for TSAC and stuff like that.
I think there's somewhere in the middle, right, where we allow flexibility but still demand involvement from counselors at events. I do think that we should be flexible, but not flexible to the point where you're doing everything else but like attending the TSAC events, right? Because then it's a problem of engagement from the counselor and their commitments and responsibilities to student advocacy. So I agree with Levi, and I agree with the other side of allowing flexibility. And I think there should be potentially even maybe in PR guidelines of attendance from counselors, and maybe some wording in PR guidelines about a case by case situation as well, some wording there. But yeah.
I'm gonna pass it over to Susanna.
Just to comment on that creating a guideline and putting that responsibility on PR is almost the same thing of putting responsibility on accountability trail on academic planning. So putting more responsibility on me is difficult enough, but how does everybody feel of sending out their availability to me? That will make it easier for PR to see this date works for everybody or works with most of the council members to create events or etc.
Direct comment on that. Could we do that in the form of like a doodle poll or something? Like you give us like dates and we can just be like, oh, I'm available at these blocks. It's worked. I use that for ULP and for my CMEI work, and it seems to be one of the best ways to figure out like who all's available at the same time blocks and dates. It works a little bit better than like a Google poll or like a Sign Up Genius or something because it's specifically meant for scheduling. And I could show you how to use it if you'd be willing.
Yeah, I'm open with anything, but I just think that sending out or creating your availability that most likely is going to look like your entire semester will be the best for now.
So in relation to the accountability piece, we passed a resolution last year that I wrote around the accountability and tabling, and the responsibility in that resolution actually, I think, pointed back towards the accountability committee, because it's meeting the expectations of being a counselor. But I tried to write it, and I can send it to you as well, but I tried to make it vague enough to where like if somebody can't like table the event, they still have to like help with the background or setup or takedown or be involved in the event to some capacity. And there's a levels of requirements of like how many times per month kind of thing. So like if we have 4 events, you might be required to be at 2. So then it's a little more flexible, and we can still play with the language if we want to go that direction, but we do have something to start with that we can build from. And Will wrote that.
Levi, for the sake of time, I'm just gonna go ahead and move forward to announcements because we've only got like 13 minutes left. But
Oh yeah, I was
we
gonna
can
say.
work on that doodle poll and stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say if there's any more questions, comments, concerns, you can get with Susanna or me, and we'll try to figure something out. Or Haley. Susanna, sorry.
Susanna. Mike isn't here, so we're gonna go ahead and skip Board of Trustees updates. Do we have anything from SACAB, Matt and Vic? Mike.
So we had, in terms of the ABOD vote, we presented to, first, we met with President Davidson last week on Thursday, and that was a semi-productive meeting. She was really just on the fence about support or not moving forward with the vote, which is interesting coming from Metro. But nonetheless, we met with 5 out of the 9, and we presented to them on Wednesday. And CU board of regents was up for it. There was a couple of governing appointees that were for it. CCD was for it. But yeah, it was mainly Janine and AHEC or not AHEC, Metro, who was really not supportive or against it, which is more saying the other way, really. But yeah, it looks like because of that, the good news, I think we're going to go forward and start moving with writing a bill and trying to find legislators for that. So we're going to vote for the resolution in April for the ABOD, and then a bill is going to be written in concurrent with that resolution as well, just so currently we can go and meet up with legislators for that. And RTD, she was supposed to send out the survey. She didn't, so she's going to send it out in the next couple of weeks, and then we should get more information on RTD in a couple of weeks. So.
Perfect. Accountability, do you have anything besides the Constitution?
Just want to make sure that I heard that right. She's not in support of the student vote. Is that what I'm understanding? Because I missed a part of it. That's what I was talking to Matt.
She was more hesitant. So she didn't say like yes, but she also didn't say no. She was very, very specific on her wording in that sense.
Basically, she stated that she's not exactly for it, but she won't stand in her way. She's not going to oppose us, but she's not like gun ho on being on our side.
Do you need any support from the council with this? In any capacity? Just because I feel like if students are sitting on that board, they should have a vote on that board.
Yeah, and we've had some interesting discussions about that because another thing that I found interesting out of that meeting is this seems to be the first time that all of SACAV has actually reached out to the board members versus just having our ABOD rep at the meetings. So my other concern is taking the short-term win of trying to incorporate that into our bylaws, so we can take the power that's sitting on the table while trying to pursue trying to get a vote.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we also have to go through SACAP's bylaws and rewrite that, having to do that and making sure, all the requirements that some of the board members gave us kind of fit their criteria. As well as I'm going to have to go through the SACAP bylaws here in the student government packet as well to see if there's anything that goes against the SACAP requirements in TSEC. So.
Anything from accountability?
Just again, we're gonna do that special session, so please, whenever that's announced, try to make time for that. Be aware that might take a while, depending on what we determine the length of it, and potentially more than one special session, depending on how the council feels. The next thing is I've been working with these standing committees for their revision of their part. PR so far has been great. But I do still need those purpose paragraphs from all the standing committees. I think Levi's the only one who's done the one for the chairs, so the chairs don't have to worry about that anymore. I do ask though to revise the responsibilities listed on the Constitution for the chairs, though. I'm the other chair. Please look at it. And that's it. That's all for accountability. Thank you.
Patrick and Mike aren't here for budget, but be aware that there should be a budget meeting coming up because we did have a student reach out about a funding request. Moving on to PR.
I wanted to talk first about Siobhan. Siobhan has decided to resign on the PR committee. If you want to say something, Siobhan.
Because I have a big workload with other orgs that I'm in, and two of them are faculty led ventures that I got offered. So that's why I will have to because my workload with being a full-time student, and I have three other things that I got signed up for. So I would have to resign from all of the standing committees that I'm in. So I could only do like but I'm still willing to help like with the tabling, setting up and all that. But I just don't have capacity for standing committees at this time. Thank you.
And I don't have pretty much updates except the February event that was added on the new business. I'll just keep everybody updated on what that is. Me and Levi have some ideas on that, but that is going to be TBD for everyone else. Thank you.
I also just wanted to shout out everybody that helped with the planning and carry through of Welcome Week and helping out with that. That turned out really great. The decorations were killer. It seemed like everybody was having a good time. So thank you for everybody that helped with like the planning, setup, cleanup, and just helping out at that event. Moving forward, sustainability. We don't really. Do you have anything?
Yeah, we need to talk and set up a meeting. But I got into contact with Riley about Earth Week. Looks like we might be helping with the committee to set up Earth Week. So look into that, and as well as they offered to donate some school supplies to us to restock our stuff. So expect a lot of stuff in the closet.
Please send me that invite, because I'm trying to start some work with the sustainability committee with SACAB, and some of my ideas through there would include TSAC.
Perfect. Faculty, staff, and senate.
Yeah, so we went to the meeting this week. They introduced the new interim provost. And then they talked about some policy changes. A couple of the main big ones that would affect students is this semester is the first semester where the withdrawal deadline is 85% of the class. So the withdrawal date would be April 24th. So it's actually the withdrawal deadline's later than it's ever been. So you have a chance to like get finals, maybe get some of those, or midterms, get some of those papers back and decide if you need to withdraw. I think that is just a withdrawal though, not like withdrawal where you get money back. They also changed one on transfer credits for English 1020. Because most credits, if they're like 4 or 5 years old, they don't count. They moved it back to for English 1020 to be 10 years. So for some of our older students, if they took English a long time ago, it could still potentially count. And then they're going also into a cycle. So next year, trying to remember which one because it alternated. This year, they're not changing any policies, and then then the following year is they're not changing any of the like curriculum. Are you aware about any of that, Dr. Brown? Okay. Basically what they're doing is they're alternating so they're like auditing at them, so then they're not changing things while they're trying to audit. Other than that, most of it was around things like changing how teachers get tenure and stuff. So it's not as relevant to TSAC or the students.
Sorry.
I just jump on it.
It was another thing that you didn't mention about how they have changed the graduate course load policy. Did you have
The graduate course load is actually more of the teachers' course load. So like how many courses they would be teaching versus like how much time they have outside of class to meet with students. That's not about like the graduate course load for students.
We got 2 minutes. I got a couple open floor announcements and I want advisors to have time as well. And I know people might have other open floor announcements. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to extend the meeting by, let's do 10 minutes. Second. Any objections? Any abstentions? Perfect. Okay, open floor announcements updates. Does anybody have any? Levi.
How long is yours, Victor? Okay. So I'll try to be quick with mine. Mine is about the meeting I had with the Colorado Department of Higher Education. They had the Attorney General there, Phil Weiser. Yeah. We were able to ask him a couple questions. I'll relate to some of the more pertinent ones. So first things first. Someone asked about what will happen to undocumented students with the upcoming presidency. And he said that they're going to try to talk to universities and other places of higher education and ask them to protect their undocumented students by having their data minimization for what data that they have on the students. So that way it will be able to protect them more. Other than that, I asked him a question about what is the future of higher learning with this upcoming presidency, because I figured the Attorney General will have a good idea. In total, he told me that they're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, and they're uncertain how it's going to affect us. Other than that, besides our discussion with him, there's two other initiatives that are being put forward by the CMAD or CDHE. They're going to try to push two bills, and what these two bills are is career connected designation. Pretty much what they want to do is that they want to work with higher ed and employers to where it be a more direct pipeline to what you're learning in school will transfer to skills in the work field that you're going. Like they would work with companies for like civil engineering degrees, CIS degrees. They would work directly with like some of the companies that want to hire them, and they would give their advice on what should be on a curriculum, so that way they can take those classes and fulfill those qualifications. The next one would be a legislative House bill, or sorry, one of the legislative House bills where they want to create a statewide credit transfer website, so that way all the universities will abide by a universal standard for credit transfers across the state. And that's all I got from the meeting.
Direct comment? Go for it.
Do you have bill numbers for those?
For the credit transfer is House Bill HB 251038, and they did not have the bill number for the other one.
Okay. And then do you know if these are going to be implemented into MSU Denver's Advocacy Day at the Capitol, or our TSAC's Day at the Capitol? It's coming up in mid-February.
Yeah, the day after Capitol, it will be a part of that as well. They did want to reach out and ask us for our assistance when it comes to advocating for these bills, mainly because they said they did get some pushback from admin on higher education.
Okay. Perfect.
Vic?
So we had a town hall this Wednesday for undocumented students and what's going to happen in terms of that. David Fine was there, as well as McGregor. They both, not McGregor, Gregor, my bad. Yeah, Gregor. They kind of just presented what resources they have for students on campus, and they thankfully, I'm grateful. They have a lot. They're working with an outside firm for immigration attorneys that they'll contact students with if they need assistance like that. They have a fund called Dreamers Fund where students can apply to renew DACA, as well as they have a fund for any other assistance that they need, emergency fund. They got a big donor just so the ISCP could hire their own immigration attorney. One of the things they also said was that if presented a warrant to call David Fine's office, and then David Fine and one of his representatives would come to your location and check the warrant out, make sure it's valid, make sure it's not valid. I did have my reservations on that one just because students may feel panicked, or whoever is in that situation may feel panicked, may not know phone number, or may not even think about calling the phone number. So there's some of those reservations like that, but I was presenting this just because there is a lot already for undocumented students, and I don't know what capacity we can do other than the cards and the search warrant posters, which is still, I think, good, but I think we may need to rethink our goal because there is already so many resources for undocumented students, thankfully. I don't know, you guys had maybe thoughts on that? We only have 6 minutes, but maybe we can have a conversation. But just to put that out there, there's the homies are supported here, thankfully.
Direct comment?
I would say we could have a meeting with sustainability and inquire on what we can change about that. Our goals with that.
Anything else with that? Any other open floor announcements? Real quick, I just have a couple quick things. From President's Cabinet, President Davidson did talk at the beginning a little bit about this upcoming presidential administration and how, at the end of the day, we're just holding true to our values as a university. We've always been a diverse university. We're staying true to that and the inclusion aspect. There's no current plan to change names of any of our like CMEI offices or diversity offices. We're going to continue to do that work and make sure that our students are at the forefront and they're all have the resources that they need, and that we're making sure all those voices are uplifted and they have access to everything that they need. Which I think is important because that's something that we've talked about as well. So hearing that from President Davidson was nice. It would be nice if we could maybe get it a little bit further spread out, but I know she did send out some messaging around that on the day of inauguration as well. One of the philosophy professors was nominated for an Oscar, which I thought was cool. They've got like a short cartoon film that's going to be on Netflix. So look out for that, and hopefully it looks like they have a pretty good odds of winning an Oscar, which is super duper cool. The advancement campaign is moving into the Roadrunners Rise public phase. So they've raised over $76 million for the university, which is super cool. But for this public phase, they're looking for possibly more student government inclusion. So we might be hearing a little bit more about that. So just keep that in the back of your guys' heads. There's some sort of town hall for a proposed safety building on January 30th. I don't have all the information for it. However, if you want information for it, it's on the early bird. It sounds like it's going to be a building that the Auraria police are going to be stationed in, along with some other classrooms and other things. So they talked briefly about that. Mike Ramsey sent me over an opportunity called Mentor Monday. This is specifically for female identifying students, where they will be able to connect and speak with a handful of executive level women from nonprofit government agencies and big businesses, just to kind of get connected and get some networking opportunities. I can send that flyer in the chat if you guys want to help kind of distribute that out. And I thought I had something else, but I can't think of it. So we'll just roll with that for now. I'm going to pass it over to the advisors.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I have three things. First thing is elections are coming up, as I said earlier. So a couple things to note with that. Those of you who are not running next year, we are going to be starting tabling soon. So if you have the capacity to do that, we are going to be tabling in two locations, Tivoli and JSSB. The reason being, we want to be closer to MSU affiliated students in JSSB, Tivoli just to promote the election. So again, that is coming up. So please, again, that's an opportunity for those of you who are not running or not planning to run again. Please, Sam, the advisors, we're going to need some support with some of that tabling. So as you're comfortable with it, please work that into your schedule. Applications are out and available. Please encourage those who you work with or around to fill out an application and run. Let's do it. Let's get a lot of candidates. That way we can fill up all those 12 spots. And marketing will be going out soon. So Sam will have a more in-depth update next week about elections for everyone, okay? Second thing I wanted to share with you all is SAB process is starting up. We have two wonderful counselors who are serving on the SAB committee. Please know that it is really important for TSAC to be using your money and funding allocated and funding wisely. There's a lot of anticipation that there is no new funding that's going to be available. So in order to make a strong case, it is really important that you all are spending your money wisely. And I think you have shown really good opportunities this semester with outreach events, with different collabs that you've done with CMEI and other departments, as well as the delegate program. That has been a really good thing. So these are good things to highlight. Again, that's coming up. So we really need to think creatively about what we're going to do there. Finally, there is a committee out there called the Student Fee Review Committee. This is a committee that reviews FY26, so next year's fee proposals, and make recommendations to the student body presidents and board of trustees. According to MSU Denver policy, there are two TSAC members that are required. It's asked for the TSAC VP, we don't have a VP, so it would be either of you and one other TSAC member. Does not necessarily have to be Patrick just because it's budget related. So one of the things I need is I need one more person to serve on that. The meetings, yes. Each panel member will be expected to attend 2 virtual meetings for an hour and a half each. We plan to hold these meetings on Friday, February 7th from 2:30 to 4, and Friday, February 21st from 2:30 to 4. So 2 times. 2 days, 2 times. Matt? Thank you. Armando? Sorry,
I
I'm
was gonna,
asking
s-
you to speak.
I was gonna say, since the establishment of TSAC, I'm sorry, my wisdom teeth, whatever. Since the establishment of TSAC, we have purposely challenged every policy that states anything about a VP, president, or specific person from TSAC. So I will challenge that policy with the advisor's blessings alongside me. It does not have to be the co-chairs if they cannot do it. If anyone else does have the capacity, we will support you on that.
Thanks, Armando. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Any other interests? We have Haley and we do have Matt. Are you all okay with that? All right. I will forward on those 2 names for you both. Thank you both for being willing to do that. I yield my time.
We are 2 minutes over my extended time. So if you do have something, let me extend the time. But if not,
I motion we extend the meeting 3 minutes.
seconded. Any objections? Any abstentions?
I just wanted to, both of you, both Haley and Stephen covered almost all the things that I was going to say. The only other thing that I felt like was missing, one thing, I'll just reiterate what Haley talked about Dr. Davidson's commitment to maintaining our mission, our values, being an open access institution. Because of my role in my job, I've been having a lot of conversations with a lot of staff members. And I just want to let y'all know that we have institutions in the state of Colorado who are making different choices around how they are approaching DEI work right now and not being, how can I say this diplomatically? What I will say is that not everyone is taking the same stance that MSU Denver is taking around the ways that we will continue to maintain our values and do what we do here, which is be an open access university and HSI and the populations that we serve. Because of my role and Stephen's role and a lot of the people that I supervise, including Gregor, I want you all to know that we are committed. We are here for our students, and without our students and doing this work, this would not, the university would basically have to shut down, right? For us to do away with this work. So I just want to remind everyone that we are here for all students, and that we will continue to do that work. And that was affirmed by the Board of Trustees at the MLK breakfast. It was affirmed this week for me, and it was really validating for me to hear that. But I think it's important for me to share that with all of you because I think there's a lot of concern, and rightfully so, from students and staff members about a lot of things, but their livelihoods and their jobs and just where we are. So I just want to reiterate that point because of my role and just the work that we do here. And just want to thank you all for your advocacy and really stepping in and wanting to be helpful and supportive of all of our students here on campus. And I want to thank you all for responding really quickly to see what you all could do for the students. And there are a lot of resources and supports available to our immigrant student populations, but that doesn't, I want you all to know that your support, your presence, your being there, and your ability to connect with those communities on the student level is really important. So your leadership is really appreciated there and your advocacy. So I don't want to discount anything that happened in terms of you all wanting to rally around this really important advocacy and cause. And we just need to kind of think about how do we share information in a way that's helpful and useful to students. So I will say that. And then the other thing I just want to remind you all is that Dr. Davidson is scheduled to attend a TSAC meeting, I believe in early February. So just wanted to remind us of that and make sure that y'all are prepared for that agenda, because we'll probably be asking for agenda items and talking about that with you as well. So there's a meeting where she'll be attending. And then the other thing is we will probably likely have Will coming to a meeting once a month, and Taylor as well. So I just wanted to remind you all that we want to continue to maintain those relationships with senior leaders, and that you all have good questions, and that we continue that dialogue as we continue to navigate a really complicated and challenging space politically.
Armand, did you have anything? Do I need to extend?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Second.
Abstentions? Any abstentions? Okay, bye.